I call to order I guess this is a special meeting of the Building Board of Appeals for September 22nd, 2022. Call to order. Roll call.
Paul Darling,
Here.
Robert Hart,
Here.
Kevin Cox,
Here.
David Arnsdorf, absent, Hugh Fleck, absent. Staff, we have Glenn Dempsey,
Here.
Michael Redmond,
Here.
John Reiser,
Here.
myself, Deborah Williams. Roll call is complete, and we do have a quorum.
Thank you. First item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda. A motion for that?
Move to approve. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Approval of the minutes from the September 15th, 2022 meeting last week. Can I get there's a summary of those meetings in here. We had some technical difficulties and had to adjourn the meeting. So can we have a motion to approve that?
Motion
minutes?
to approve. Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, those pass. Appeals and action and show cause hearing for BBA A22-002 for 616 East Washington Street, Ann Arbor, Michigan. And the first thing item here we'll have is the staff report of that.
Okay, I'll go ahead with the staff report. Glenn Dempsey speaking. As you can see under the introduction, the screening room building operated by the Michigan Theater is located on a separate adjacent lot from the theater and connected to it. The lot is also the construction site of a new 19-story high-rise building under construction, which is designed to wrap around the screening room. The petitioner is requesting modifications to means of egress to allow the continued use and occupancy of the screening room building during the construction of the high-rise. During this approximately 1.5-year period, petitioner is proposing that alternative exit arrangements be approved incorporating the use of the building and lots in the immediate area of the screening room. The request involves several variables, including a phased approach to egress paths through active construction sites, egress paths through 2 buildings under construction on those sites, and occupant load adjustments. And with that, this seems like a very complicated proposal and project. I believe it's quite simple. It's not as complicated as it looks. The code is being met. The code does apply, and the applicant isn't proposing any equal or better allowance to exit the building. I might also say an approval of this request and with the employees and the public are in harm's way. I believe that with the information provided, the Building Board of Appeals should deny this. Keep in mind, the board has no authority to waive the code requirements. With that, the staff would recommend denial of this proposed allowance for exiting during the construction process.
Okay. Thank you, Glenn. And we have an applicant here who can come up and give us an update on your variance request.
Yes. Hi, Laura Eder with ESG Architects out of Minneapolis. We are the architecture firm for the 616 and 630 building that's surrounding the Michigan Theater. We have Scott Bowers here, who's the architect for the Michigan Theater, and we also have Russ Collins here with us, who's the, what is your role?
The Grand Fromage.
That of the executive director of the Michigan Theater. Are you going to share in the presentation? Awesome. Okay, I thought the best way to go through this would be to talk through the staff analysis, so that we're just touching on those points. Since we were all here, we talked about this for over 2 hours, and here, we kind of know what we're doing here. So the first topic, you can go to the next slide, is the fire suppression system. We talked last time about how the fire suppression may not be operable operational during the construction. We have figured out how to connect it to the 630 building during construction. So 630 will have a TCO when this goes into effect, when this process goes into effect of the change of egress. And so we will keep the fire suppression system active the entire time that the Michigan Theater screening room is occupied. So through the extent of the 616 construction, it'll temporarily be tied into 630 until 616's fire suppression system is activated. So we can't tie into the Michigan Theater suppression system. That doesn't have the capacity, but it does have it on 630. So we will go into that building. So that's one item that we had talked about. Next slide. So stage 3 limits the occupancy to 49 occupants for a single means of egress. That would be the center line here, stage 3, which is approximately 180 days from January to June-ish, talking through limiting the occupants so that there's only one means of egress out of the screening room. So going to the next slide, we're highlighting on this page the ownership of the buildings. So true property lines tend to follow ownership lines. This is not the case here. There are very many long, lengthy legal agreements that the Michigan Theater owns, the Michigan Theater, the existing screening room, and what will be the Michigan Theater restrooms within the 630 building. So though there are property lines, the ownership and operation will be concurrent through the Michigan Theater. Next slide, please. Here's kind of a zoomed in portion. We talked last time about the potential for exiting through the Michigan Theater restrooms. There's a little kind of nubbin to the northeast of the Michigan Theater and next to the screening room and Michigan Theater restrooms that will ultimately be available during this time of single occupancy. So then there would be 2 egress points, one through the Michigan Theater lobby and one through the Michigan Theater restrooms. Both would be operational at that time. They would not be under construction. And then this is the slide showing the existing screening room once construction is complete. So one of the reasons that property line did not jog around the existing screening room is because today there is a property line between the Michigan Theater and existing screening room already. And if we were to jog that in its final condition, we would be asking you to approve this for the entirety of the life of the building, where the egress would go back into the Michigan Theater. We don't believe that that's the best egress path for the existing screening room. We're only asking for temporary means during construction. And we feel that it's safer for occupants to exit back through the Michigan Theater lobby than through the construction site. So the property line and ownership diagram are varied because we think ultimately the existing screening room exiting through the 616 building is a higher level of protection for the occupants in the screening room. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the submitted document on how you egress out of the existing screening room. We have added the red line that takes you through the restrooms. So the new construction, the 630 building is a type 1A construction. It is a higher construction rating. It has a 3-hour support system and is fully sprinklered. So it is kind of, as you exit the existing screening room, you will have a higher level of fire protection as well as construction as you exit, and it is still under the 250 feet maximum travel distance to the exit. Next slide. So travel distance exit for an assembly occupancy in sprinklered buildings is 250 feet. We vary between 141 and 214 based on a few paths. So I highlighted this path, which is, go ahead to the next one, you're good. 214 through the Michigan Theater lobby from the back side of the screening room. And then the next one would be 210 if you went through the restrooms on that path, and then the next one is 170 if you went through the existing screening room and through the restrooms on the other alternate path. Next slide, occupant load. So the occupancy of the screening room currently, as it was designed, was 257 occupants. We're asking to limit 49 for this temporary use for the 180 days for construction. We are willing to remove seats, cover seats, block seats off, kind of discuss how that, if the Building Board of Appeals has a recommendation on that, how that is covered. With the world of COVID and all of us wearing masks today, maybe we don't want 49 seats in there because we might want to spread apart a little bit. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next item, so moving to the next portion of the staff report, is stage 4, egress to the construction site. So this is when we have one exit onto the 616 property, and we kind of regain that larger occupancy count. So next slide. I know the staff report had stated that various egress routes was fairly vague. It will be important for the construction team to understand with timing what is the best route, and I can't draw that on the map currently because we won't know as the phasing and the timing happens until we get closer what that route is, but I'm certain that the Landmark construction team would be happy to submit that to the building department for review, and we will follow the Chapter 33 safeguards for construction as pedestrians and occupants of the building egress through that out to the public way. Next slide. Oh, safeguards during construction. Chapter 33 outlines, Chapter 33 is established that reasonable safety precautions are to be provided during construction and demolition to protect the public from injury and adjoining properties from damage. So ideally, you would not have any issues with the safety of the occupants of the screening room exiting through the construction site when these routes are in place. One of the reasons we're asking for the 180 days is because we are not feeling like it would be safe for them to cross that construction site until that time. So construction has said that is the length of time we need to make sure that we feel comfortable providing a clear path, lighted, covered, protected, that no one would get off the path and be in a dangerous situation. Again, we have the letter from Russ stating their support so that we do not close the Michigan Theater. And then next slide, in conclusion, we feel that we proposed an equal exiting plan during construction that would allow safe egress of the screening room occupants. The first part is not exiting across the construction site during unsafe times, which is stage 3, and exiting through the 630 restrooms increases the fire safety of the occupants as they egress within the Type 1A construction, and then exiting through the Michigan Theater lobby does not decrease the fire safety of the occupants. As long as you don't imagine that it's a separate building, because it's not. If we're taking out the horizontal exit, the exit passageway, we're taking all that out of the discussion and just saying we're exiting through the same building, that doesn't come into play. So it would still remain as the same fire safety. And then item 2, exiting one exit through the 616 construction site once safe, following the Chapter 33 Michigan Building Code safeguard requirements, and keeping one exit through the Michigan Theater allows occupants to exit in the direction that's most safe in the case of emergency during stage 4. And then actually, will you go back 2 slides? And then we'll go into the last 2 slides if there's questions about exiting. Thank you.
Okay. Does the board have any questions?
Could you, go back to the page 21 slide that talks about stage 4.
Yes.
The yellow bar that represents the temporary second egress from the screening room, what does that terminate on? Because it shows it as part of the finished plan. I went by the site this morning, and there's a fence that basically, and obviously an excavation, but there's also a fence that seems to come right up to the backside of Lane Hall. So if that yellow line egress was deployed, would it exit onto an open and unobstructed, clear path to the sidewalk?
Yes, so my understanding is that the fire lane will need to be operational to get the TCO of the 630 building.
It will.
And so that is the fire lane
So
that
it's-
dead ends to the 630 building. So that is actually the main egress point. That exit point will be the final exiting point for the screening room to come out of the building. And then they'll be able to use the fire lane to walk to Washington Street. So yes, it will be a walkable, protected path. And if there is construction overhead, there would need to be construction safeguards for protecting people along that path.
Okay. And then there's a means of egress from the northwest corner of the Michigan Theater. That leads to an open alleyway? Does it?
That's a current path.
That's correct, yes.
Is there a reason why that yellow bar couldn't be down on the, I guess, the north wall of the Michigan Theater?
Yes, and I think the idea that I highlighted this yellow bar was this is the final exit path. I wouldn't say this is the only exit path that they would have. I think there's a chance that this yellow bar could go straight to Washington for a year, and then they all of a sudden need to finish the lobby, and then it goes to towards the parking ramp with a protection. I think there's various routes from the exiting of the screening room to Washington Street that will be provided as construction allows, because they're going to need to finish this level 1 at some point. So exterior walls are going to start showing up. CMU is going to be installed on one side, and I think I know construction is going to have various egress routes over the course of this year and a half. So this yellow bar is not to represent the only path. It's just an optional path and the final path, which makes it kind of the easiest route to show, because it'll probably end up being the longest standing route, the route that they use the most.
I have a question about the egress path that's going through the 630 building. Will those restrooms be built out at that period of time when they're going through that? Or is that going to be a shell space and the fixtures will be put in after the other means of egress is set up?
It'll be built out, completely operational. Currently, the restrooms are to the left-hand side of the existing screening room, and to demolish that building, the 630 restrooms have to be in full operation for the Michigan Theater to continue operating.
Are those the existing doors that are in the bathrooms right now? Are those not swinging the wrong way for fire egress?
So the doors going into the restroom from the screening room are swinging in the direction of final, we'll call it final design. So that way there is no egress across the property lines, which is one of the things we talked about in the Building Board of Appeals about a year and a half ago, was that each building has to egress itself in its final stages. And then you didn't want to block anybody in. We had the idea that you could fire shutter down and the Building Board of Appeals at the time said, well, if I went through that door and everybody's panicking, I might want to go back through it, even if I find out there's a fire on the other side. If you give me a fire shutter, I might actually start to panic. So those doors are currently swinging in the direction of travel for the final, but it doesn't say that we couldn't switch door swings throughout construction to allow for the varied egress paths that are happening during the 2 years.
And that's just the new construction area, that's just a blanked off area right now? There's no restrooms, there's no nothing right there?
Correct.
So when we're exiting through the, kind of following on Bob's point about exiting through the 616 building that's under construction, the remainder of that path, is that going to have egress lighting? What is the, you know, at night, I see most of it's going to be occupied at night. Is there going to be those provisions out there for that?
Yeah, I believe the provisions require overhead protection if there's work above, walls that keep people from going out, and then lighting. And I think there's some other requirements as well. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on that. I don't tend to
Was that Chapter 33?
do that. But yeah, we would follow all of that. And then if Glenn wanted us to do something, I'm sure that the team would add it. Just to make sure that those occupants are safe when they're egressing. Because it is, you know, as somebody in a screening room and then a fire or something happens and then going out, you want to make sure that's a clear lit path that people feel protected going out.
So, well, you talked about the fire suppression system being active in the screening room. What about the fire alarm systems between the 630 building? Will there be some type of device happening in there? If somebody's in the restrooms and the alarm goes off, that they know people are going to be, you know, I don't know if it's possible to connect those things, but that's a component of it, is the fire alarm as well.
Yeah, so the way they'll work, which was part of the previous Building Board of Appeals, is all the doors that are connected between each building will close automatically regardless of which building's alarm goes off. So if the Michigan Theater building alarm goes off, all those doors at all those property lines will automatically close. So the alarm probably will not go off. The alarm will not go off in the 630 building if the Michigan Theater alarm is going off, but those doors between them will automatically close regardless of which side is happening.
And that'll be far enough along that that'll be operational by the time that they need that to be operational.
Correct. I don't believe that the building department would give us a temporary certificate of occupancy for those restrooms unless the fire alarm was operational.
And you were saying at stage 4, the occupant load, you're requesting would be back up to the 257 versus the 49.
Correct, because we would have two means of egress, one through the construction site and one through the Michigan Theater lobby.
Does the board have more questions? I mean, it does seem like something that the BBA would be able to, the process should go to the BBA because it's not going to be written in the normal code about unusual circumstances like this.
Correct, and
There's
I
going to be things
think-
on there about occupancy during construction, but,
Yeah, and I think one of the things that complicates this too is the existing door between the screening room and the Michigan Theater, and then the previous approval of the 6:30 crossings. So that, both of those are, we'll call it outside of the true black and white portion of the code, and since they've been previously approved, since the Michigan Theater operates all of these as though it's one ownership, the property lines to me are a dash line on a survey and not truly the intent of the code property line scenario here.
so if they, if the variance was supported, it seems like we'd want to have some type of temporary CO at the beginning of each stage by the building department.
So the building department would require, if any use of the 630 building, they have to have a temporary C of O. To
For an-
obtain that temporary C of O, they would have to have the complete shell done, they'd have to have the suppression alarms all in. There's quite a bit involved. While the whole building doesn't have to be done on the individual
Yeah,
apartments, to get that temporary, they have to have at least the floor above, all the main items done, and the safety factors put in place for any type of TCO for the 630 building.
for the
So it's not just the
6:30.
minimum
Yeah.
of finishing the fixtures on the first floor.
Yeah, And that would be true for the 616 building before the other way went through, if the other egress is going through the,
Yes, that is correct.
yeah. So is that achievable, a temporary CO, as far as having the other things in place for the 630 building and the 616 building before those sequences would
Before the
happen?
stages change? I think that's absolutely achievable, and that would be something that we would work with the building department on, and the fire department.
And it seems like, we'd want to have probably additional, fire inspections or some type of inspection to make sure that the egress path is clear between temporary COs, that the egress path is clear, there aren't obstructions, that the things are working as they're supposed to be working. I don't know if that would be monthly or what periodic that potentially could be at, but
That's actually, building would be looking at those exit ways,
it's
if
part of.
allowed for
Yeah.
a use during construction.
Mhm. So if they called for an inspection, it would happen, but if it was between inspection periods, would that still occur, or would the building facilitate that?
We would work with them as best we
Okay,
could,
yeah, okay,
and checking those exits.
yeah, okay,
The difficult part is during construction, if the exits want to be changed, and if we've approved one exit and they want to modify it, how often might that happen?
yeah, It seems like we do want to tie it to any change in the sequencing of the operation of the occupant load. That's what it seems like changing between those sequences is the path or the occupant load. Anything like that would definitely have to get
I
a
agree.
different temporary CO or an updated temporary CO or,
It's a very unusual
It
situation.
is, yeah.
Very few jurisdictions will ever come across this. In Michigan, you might have them in larger cities, not on a regular basis. so.
Yeah. It makes me think of like a high-rise under construction when the lower floors are occupied and the top's not done yet, but that still goes through a process, And that's a single building, not multiple different properties, but. But it seems like measures like that could make sure that they're ensuring that the egress path is clear, the buildings are safe, to make that happen if that is the concern, and the alarm systems are working.
That works at the time of inspection.
Yeah,
Here we have the human factor that comes involved during
Yeah.
construction,
yeah,
and changes that may have to apply.
yeah,
I'm not sure they'll be able to call us right now, we're making this change. There
Yeah,
might be
yeah,
a little
yeah.
bit of delay in that. We
Yeah.
can work with them as best as possible.
Yeah.
But you have factors that involve the
Yeah.
construction.
So, I mean, it would be that, I guess, if their systems aren't operational, it means that maybe that screening room's not used at night or something, if something's physically not working, you don't have a CO for that day, or, you know,
I mean, it's completely possible for the building department or the fire department to shut this down if it doesn't work to the agreement that we're making today, if we make an agreement.
so that's what I was thinking, if there was a periodic inspection once a week or something like that, that you would be able to check on that. There's kind of an honor system there, but there'd also be a check that, yes, the things are operational as intended, and they're not, you know,
Yeah, I think at minimum, if they're looking to change the way they're doing things, I would want them to submit it through a revision process that I'd have my plan reviewer look at, and then we can address it accordingly.
Yeah, and I would only see that as the various egress routes through the construction, and that's a 1.5 years long, so I can imagine they're not tearing stuff down and moving it every week. So I think that seems like a reasonable process.
so you'll submit an updated sequencing plan showing the egress, the fire ratings, what alarm systems are working.
Yeah, I think that could be worked out, or at least a check-in phone call with the construction team that says this is the plan for the next 6 months, so that the inspectors know what to look for.
So would we require them to turn in a sequencing plan?
Can you talk into
Oh,
the
sorry.
speaker? It's hard to hear you.
Would we be requiring them to turn in a sequencing plan?
Seems that
Then-
would be appropriate, yeah. An overall, or sequencing plan up front, and then each time they go to the sequence, they would say, here's what's changing, here's where demoing, here's where we're changing, and, you know, status of construction.
I think that would help the building department and the fire department understand what's happening, and then it would be a piece of paper to point to say we agree to this, rather than a building board of appeals meeting note that happened 2 years ago. I think that seems like a fair statement. I'd probably be the one making that, so I guess I'm committing myself to doing this.
Yeah. Any other questions, or ready to make a motion, or try to craft a motion?
Yeah.
Can I add one thing? Would you mind if I, sorry?
Go ahead.
If you would, please, indicate which item allows the appeal to go forward. There are 3
Also, like
items
form of
that allow the
construction or
board
something?
to,
Yeah. If you want
if
to
you can make
propose.
sure that you clearly
Yeah.
identify which
one-
item will.
If it doesn't
if you're gonna-
apply,
If you
not- yeah,
approve it,
yeah,
identify
right.
which item
Yeah, okay.
allows them to be approved, please.
Okay,
Thank you.
So I'll advance a motion to, but I can't, I can only do so in support of the stage 4 part of the project. And the reason for that, at least for me, is that I think that there are just too many dicey operational issues that with stage 3 that rely essentially on one exit and keeping an occupant count within 49 people. And the reason I could advance a motion for stage 4 is because you have a second means of egress. So I'm going to proceed on that basis with a motion. I'm sorry, I'm going to proceed on that basis with a motion.
Is it possible for me to make a note and show the rest of the slides, and show an option for stage 3 that we haven't talked about?
Sure, pull a slide back up for stage 3. Deborah? I mean, stage 3 does have 2 means of egress. There's one through the restroom and one's back through the,
Yeah, but it's basically down the same passageway.
It shares a
So
common
there's
path for a
There's an
while.
element of a common path
Yeah,
of travel
yeah.
issue.
Yeah, so if you go to, yes, so common path of travel here, if you go to the next slide, one of the things that we looked at is actually constructing a temp wall about halfway through the screening room to really limit that, that occupancy. I know Glenn's report was very uncertain how you could limit 49 occupants in a room that could fit 250. So pulling that wall and then also putting a wall on the corridor as well, so that you're now doing a ramp within, temp ramp within the space, taking out seats that allow to be closer to that 50 number. This slide shows exactly 60. And then keeping that egress route to the same point, coming around those seats and up and out the exterior there. And that would still remain in the egress distance. So this limits that occupancy to 49 in a much more, we'll call it condensed room, with putting up what I'd call a 5-foot wall so that the projector screen still hits the screen. We're not constructing a wall that goes to the roof. We'd be constructing something that blocked people from getting to the other side. And so then that gray area would not be occupied during this stage 3 portion as a means to reduce that.
And that helps with the common path of travel.
It does help with the common path of travel. So common path of travel would remain under 75 feet to the point that you get into that corridor, and you could go either direction through the lobby or the restrooms.
And without that partition, the common path of travel is pretty high. That's twice that probably.
It is about twice that. That's why we were trying to use that egress, the exit passageway for the corridor previously. So, but going back through the lobby is really what is the issue. And using the ramp is really nice to have the ramp that's already existing for the accessible route, but it is hurting us in our common path of travel standpoint. So instead of constructing a temp stair at that corner, this would be constructing a temporary ramp. This is a much more intrusive plan to the theater screening room, but as temporary and in an effort to keep the screening room open, we're entertaining this. And I will let Russ say a word or two of just why we want to keep the screening room open.
If I may. So we have an agreement with the builder that if they close any part of the building, they pay us a penalty. So keeping the screening room open is not a matter of money for the Michigan Theater Foundation. We have just, not a surprise to anybody, been suffering for 2.5 years of COVID, where audiences have stayed away from public gathering spaces. The Michigan Theater has an extremely strong safety record over my 40 years of stewardship of the Michigan Theater Foundation. I'm a little distressed that there's concern that we would not conform to the limited capacity that would be required. That's something that we've done for 40 years in the venues that we've operated. We've operated within the legal limitations of the capacities for each of the rooms that we have. We have offered to take out the seats so that there's only 49 seats, or take out the bottom of the seats so there's no way to sit in them. The reason that we want our customers and staff to be safe. Again, we have an excellent safety record. We would not put the audience in risk. And if there was a day or a week that we had to close the theater because of some kind of construction dynamic that would threaten that, we would certainly do that. But we are trying desperately to reconstruct the community's confidence in coming back into public performance spaces. We require masks. We require vaccinations. We are about public safety in our venues. I deeply appreciate your excellent minds thinking through those issues for us. You're the experts in this particular area. But you can be absolutely assured that we are not going to cheat, we are not going to we are not going to do anything that threatens the safety of our staff or the customers. The Michigan Theater has operated the Michigan Theater Foundation has operated that theater for 43 years, and I've been there for 40 of it. And you can go back and check our safety records. And keeping the screening room open every possible day allows us the flexibility to provide the diverse programs that this community demands. It also is a place for cinema, because the two things that we do are live on stage productions that can only take place in the historic theater, and the cinema that takes place in both the historic theater and the screening room. If we lose the screening room, we will probably lose the ability to show films at the Michigan Theater for up to 2 years after the construction's done. And that's because that's the way film distribution works. You either have the capability to service their product, or you don't have that capability and you lose that opportunity until you can convince them that you will be back in the game on a regular basis. So we pledge the safety of our customers, of our staff. We pledge compliance with the restrictions that are required. We are quite satisfied with the way that the owners that are adapting this to make it so that we have the full and complete understanding of how to create that safety, how to modify when the safety is needed. And I'm a little hurt, but who cares, that there's anxiety about us complying, because if it was just about money, we'd just close the screening room and have them pay us. But we have bigger mission-driven dynamics.
I'm sorry you feel hurt, but we're looking at this from a slightly different perspective than you are. Okay? I mean, I don't distrust your veracity or your commitment to safety or anything like that. Not at all. But again, we're looking at this from a very different point of view. And you guys are coming in asking a lot in terms of what the building official is advising, which is no way, no how. And we're looking to try to find a way to make this work.
I appreciate that.
Good. Then please continue.
Well, that's it. I mean, that's the two things that I wanted to point out is if it was just about money, we'd close the screening room and take the checks from the developers. This is about working in the best way we can, in the safest manner that we can, to continue the mission and the service that we provide to the community. And having that screening room is a key part. Even in a reduced capacity, it is extremely valuable to what we do. When we had to close the State Theater for cinema exhibition, we added a small theater into the Cadillac building, again, so that we did not lose the consistency of being able to service the product for our film program. And this is a very similar kind of situation. And again, I'm extremely grateful for your volunteer time. I'm extremely grateful for the expertise and care that you share. and that you commit to this. So thank you very much. My anxiety to, as we've been through with the architects, how this might work, and as my understanding has grown, and my expertise does not meet your expertise, I can't honestly say that. But this is an issue that obviously involves safety. It involves correct operation to maximize safety. And the other issue is it really does affect our mission, our ability to serve the community, and to a certain degree, the future of how we're able to continue to operate this community asset. So again, thank you so much for your careful consideration, and it's very, very meaningful. My only little bit of hurt was like, well, I don't know if those darn theater operators will comply with the specifications. And I got to tell you that we absolutely will, and we're happy to have any kind of inspections that are needed to verify that. We would be very, very open to that. So again, thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from the
Yes.
board or from staff?
Can we go back to the slide that you just sprung on us?
Sure. I had a feeling it was going to go that way, so I'm not going to lie. I spent a good solid 2 days reading the code and trying to come up with the best solutions. And I feel like based on the last report that we got from staff, this really does address some of the concerns about limiting the occupancy to 49, is limiting that area and really reducing the number of seats. And then it also addresses the common path of travel issue, so there would be less than 75 feet common path of travel until you had the point to choose between the Michigan Theater and the restroom exit.
Is there a drawing designation for this somewhere in the
Slide
packet?
number, I don't see the number in this one. Yeah.
Drawing designation?
Well, I mean, something that we can refer back to as,
In the motion.
Oh, in the motion?
So the motion's 8
Do you know,
pages.
can you tell what page it's on? It's the last page. The last page of the presentation. It doesn't have that in the presentation.
That's not in our current packet, but
No.
it should be.
Do you want a hard copy? Does that help? What do you need for a record? We can submit just this plan after today, as part of the meeting minutes, if you would like.
Okay. So while we're looking at this, so the portion that's shaded in blue is going to be the active 49. That's the, which side
Thanks.
is the seat removal? The gray side or the gray side? Okay.
So there'd be no access to behind those seats, and the screen is in front
Okay.
of those seats on the right-hand side.
And then the red dotted line is going up a ramp
It is
to an exit.
an exit, and at that point, you have two choices of exits, so that's the point of common path of travel. So
Okay.
that red line represents 75 feet, and then the blue line plus the ramp equals also 75 feet.
So you can get to that exit door via the ramp and also via,
A step.
Just
Maybe a
the
step
ramp.
there, yeah.
where it
Just the
says
ramp.
exit? So there's no wall there,
There's a railing around that landing on the ramp that exit arrow is crossing. So there would not be, we could also put a staircase up to that as well.
Is that one right?
Just trying to.
2 steps? What is that? Two height, is that different? Is that 2 steps?
It's approximately a 3-foot grade change.
Okay.
There's,
Maybe 3 risers, 4 risers, something like that.
yeah. And so the reason I didn't draw a stair is because it would probably want to go north, and that would impede the view of the
Yeah, yeah.
of the screening. But what we could do is do a stair that makes that landing a little wider, and then reduce the number of chairs on the south side to keep kind of another path there. We could tweak it to add stairs.
Rather than funneling everybody up the ramp.
Up the ramp.
Yeah, I think everybody had that common path, yeah.
Putting in adding a stair.
Yeah.
Okay. Glenn, does the door where it says exit have to swing in the direction of egress?
It does
For 50
not.
people, it wouldn't have to.
Until we are greater than 49 occupants.
Yeah. Mhm. But it might help if you could put the stair there, though. We could put the stair on either side of that component, and it wouldn't block the door then if it temporarily swung the other way.
Can we get the door to swing in the direction of egress? Even though it's not a,
We can.
okay.
It'll be a
Would that meet handicap code? Is there enough room for handicap?
They'd have to
Yes.
configure the landing.
Right.
Yeah, we'd have to have a 60-inch turnaround, and then the push-pull clearances on the door on either side. So, yes, we would configure that to meet the accessibility requirements of the ramp as well as the doors.
If I might refer to the exit passageway and the requirements for that also.
Glenn, could you help me on that? The reference you just made.
So when you enter an exit passageway, it's supposed to exit to the exterior. You have to have that, and it doesn't go to the exterior. It
And-
goes, actually, it will go into a new building, another building. It doesn't go right directly to the exterior, that takes you to the public way.
And this plan, in my opinion, is not referencing any exit passageway. This is just egress. So we are removing the exit passageway and asking for the Building Board of Appeals to accept the ownership of the two buildings as the fact that these are not two separate buildings that you're horizontally exiting through. You're doing the 250-foot maximum egress travel distance. And you're not reducing your fire protection through any of those exits. So we're asking for the Building Board of Appeals to look at this as though the Michigan Theater owns both buildings, and you have 250 feet to exit the building and 75 feet to the choice between exits out of the screening room.
So the stage 4 doesn't have an exit passageway, but that's a rated enclosure, is that correct?
We are not calling it an exit passageway in that scenario, because an exit passageway is something that you would use, in my opinion, to limit your common path of travel or your egress distance, and we do not have either of those as an issue in stage 4. So I would not count that corridor as an exit passageway.
Just calling it an exit or calling it a corridor?
It's a corridor,
Yeah.
which you're allowed to exit through and into a lobby.
Would there be any other doors into that passageway, or is it basically dedicated toward the screening room?
So all the doors in the corridor are a 3-hour rating, because ultimately that will be a 3-hour corridor in its final state once the final construction is finished. So at install, all of those doors will be 3-hour rated and closed on fire alarm. And the doors that are existing currently are rated, except for the door between the Michigan Theater and the screening room, and that door is going to be updated as part of the new 3-hour wall that's being constructed between at that property line per Glenn's request.
I have one other question for
Mr. Collins?
Thank you. Can you, what might be the intention for the audience within the screening room? Would it be a mixed audience with adults and children, adults only, above the age of 18 kind of thing, or?
Our audience tends to just vary depending on what film we're showing. So we would expect that all ages would be in the theater. The majority of the audience is going to be adults.
Okay. All right. Then I'm not going to go there. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
You ready for a motion, or think you're?
I am. Yeah.
Would it be a single one, or is it be two, one for stage 3
Well,
and stage 4? How do you best craft that?
I was prepared to go with a single one, but I'm just going to combine them since the variance combines them both. I'll try to combine them both. So I hope this doesn't sound too gibberishy. I move that in the case of BBA 22-2002, the appeal of the building official's decision and 616 East Washington is granted relief from sections 202, table 106.2.1, 104.1.2, 102.4, 102.4.4, 102.6, and 102.8.1 for the stages 3 and 4 construction scenarios, and that the Building Board of Appeal modifies the building official's decision for the reasons that the applicant has proposed a reasonable temporary exiting alternative for egress through the Michigan Theater with the following stipulations. For stage 3, that the plan titled unnamed, dated 8/26/22, is advanced to limit the screening room to an occupancy of 49 with a physical barrier, with the exiting through the Michigan Theater lobby with a much reduced common path of travel and a completed 630 building. The plan presented would add a second stair at the top of the egress ramp and that the door from the screening room will swing in the direction of egress travel. The screening room would be fire suppressed and have annunciation connected to a central Michigan theater system. That the staff will be trained to monitor and provide instruction on egress. Prior to each and any theatrical showing. Further, for stage 4, that in addition to the exiting provisions from the screening room through the rated passageway to the Michigan Theater lobby and building 630 restroom building, a second NBC Section 33 approved protected walkway discharging to an equally protected and unencumbered open way, being the fire lane by Lane Hall. The construction manager for the project will detail this exit construct and submit to the city and OSHA as required. Any changes in the second egress route will be equally documented and approved prior to implementation. That fire suppression will be maintained throughout the screening room and its egress components during the interim stage 4 construction period. Again, that the staff will be trained to monitor and provide instruction on egress arrangements in a public address to the audience prior to any and each theatrical showing. That the eastern egress doors from the passageway be reversed to comply with exit flow and be equipped with panic hardware. That if there are any transgressions from these variance stipulations or unacceptable conditions are brought to the building official's attention, the building official may void the provisions of this variance. And finally, that the proposed variance is not waiving requirements of the code, but rather offering an accommodation of a temporary egress condition that endeavors to maintain the intent of the MBC as to life safety and welfare. I should amend this to say that the doors that are going to be in stage 4, that the doors that are going to be reversed to swing in the direction of egress travel are the double doors at the top of the rated passageway from the Michigan screening room and the door into the 630 building, bathroom building.
We have a motion, do we have support? The motion?
Motion is second.
Discussion on the motion? Do you want to have anything in there on inspections? Either just if it's COs or, you know, any progress inspections, or we'll leave that up to the building official for,
All right, as an addition to both stages 3 and 4 stipulations, that temporary C of Os will be in place for any component of the egress system that's required by the building official to be in place.
And did you mention there's a sequencing plan? I think you put that in there about the sequencing plan narrative, is that,
Yeah, well, I mean, the intent is that anytime they change the configuration of the second
submit
means
a
of egress,
permit.
that there's going to be a plan submitted
Yeah.
and approved before, it's implemented or used.
okay. Any staff questions on the motion? Is it clear?
Just on the appeal, which section are you allowing the appeal to go forward?
I think he
You're
said
sure
based on
on
alternate means of construction. I believe that's when he picked there.
It was section 3. But I
Proposed or equal form,
Yeah, I chose not to phrase it as an equal or better allowance.
the alternate means, basically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Proposed or better.
So you have allowances that give you the ability to allow my interpretation to be, varied from. So you have 3 sections that you can choose from.
Any other questions from staff or from the board? If not, we can vote on the motion. And with 3 people, we're going to have the minimum to pass is going to be at least 2 out of the 3 for it to pass. So those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? None. So it's like the motion passes. So next item on the agenda is old business. I don't see any old business, no other new business. Reports and communication? Reports and communications, are there any reports or communications? None? Public commentary, general? Anybody in the public wants to comment? Seeing none, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.